My image here on the screen is frozen.
Uh-huh.
But it says it's recording. Yeah.
And stop moving.
That's
That's a feature.
a feature. That's right. Very important.
I'm being sarcastic. I know the software you're working on.
I love it.
Oh, did you guys bring, this yours?
That's yours.
That's mine? Okay.
Yeah, these are printouts handed out by
Okay, so we
the.
can hand score them too.
That's the whole idea. Everyone
Okay, I was
put
gonna
their
do it
little.
on the computer, but I guess I won't.
We have to,
I think we just
I
put
don't know
all the
if the
hand
camera's
scoring,
been broadcast.
get all the hand scoring, and then we'll
I
pull
don't
it
think
together.
the
and
camera's
I'll
broadcasting
second
now
it.
then. You need to have somebody else check and see,
Tabulate it.
and he's seeing that people move.
What, you want me to try and log on?
No,
I can't stay on it for longer than half an hour.
That's why I wanted to make sure that you run the camera from a separate computer.
We have one coming.
Okay, good. All right.
But no video.
Turn it off and on first.
Yeah, there's ON/OF button. Really, OFF button. It really works well on most of these.
Gee, you don't need to record on this video.
No, you're not wanting to record now. That's just the
Right.
camera.
Should I hit record on that?
Right. There's no audio. Heard somebody come on the audio there.
No, there's no video people. But there's audio. One shotgun. Did someone just join? One shotgun.
Hello.
What, shotgun?
You're northern. That's right.
This is a great restaurant, wasn't it?
I think there's one shotgun.
Yeah.
Actually, fair enough.
There's somebody.
This is Deb Whitney.
That's up by the Grand Canyon. How do you say it?
Hi, this is Steve Peters.
I see.
Steve Marino is here.
What?
Because these are sticky.
Just like
Alright.
you said.
I thought you were trying to pronounce Oaxaca.
With the O. See, that
Yeah.
doesn't.
About 5 degrees off, Ted.
I should do better.
Right side. 5 degrees down. You need to go bring up.
There's multiple to find out, I guess.
Up.
Yes,
Right there.
Alright, okay. I have this thing I rotate stuff in my Photoshop. And I'm a quarter degree off. I'll notice the damn thing, The mine is hard to see when it comes to angle. I guess that too many people felt, the ones that weren't as good fell off the mountain and didn't survive.
Deborah, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, and you see the video, correct?
Hi.
Are we all moving around in the room, Deborah?
No, I only see one still picture of the conference room.
Okay.
Yeah, we froze them.
We're working on it. Do you think there's any hope for this telepresence stuff?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
The only solution I ever found was to
here's the
turn off
highest
the start
tech
over again when it froze.
group in the whole state of Arizona. We can't make it work.
Camera off, yeah. Try that first.
No matter how high-tech you are, if the application sucks, it won't work.
Yeah.
And if it's too hard to set up, which iLink clearly is.
Clearly.
We had it working just perfectly the other day.
Yeah.
Yeah, and how much,
Hours.
we spent about 2 hours doing it.
No, it's
And
just
can you duplicate
But who
that?
took it down then?
Can you duplicate that? That's the
Does that mean we're not supposed to try to bother with this iLink thing?
No.
We'll let you know
The
when
camera
when
froze,
you're
Steve.
iLinking. Meanwhile, audio it in your weeks when we get started. Let's see, we are.
Okay.
Yeah, we are.
You may want to unplug the
We're going to
camera,
start
plug it back
this
in.
about 5 after the hour, which gives us 2 more minutes, according to the digital clock on the
3 more.
wall. That doesn't seem, well, from my angle it says
10:02.
Actually, that's fast. 10:02 right now.
That's correct.
Sorry, from my angle it's 10:03.
10:02.
Paradox.
No, bad clock.
No.
No, the real time is 10:02. No paradox.
Where's Einstein when you need him? we have a stretching universe, or do we just have a contracting intelligence? All righty. When that hand exits from over the knob, the mark over the 1, we'll start the meeting. How's that? Oh, dear. Yeah.
Now, where's Stephen Hawking going when he dies?
I don't know.
We all do.
The freeze dry him, I guess. It's not very big. They get him straightened out for the first time. What kind of coffin are you putting in? Oh, boy.
Well, Einstein's dead, except he's being proven right, except for the maybe faster than light neutrino.
Well, I've talked to a whole bunch of physicist friends, and first you say you do, and then you don't, then you say you will, and then you won't. I mean, it keeps going back and forth and back and forth. I mean, they're saying, heck, this is faster than the speed of light in a cloud of dust and high-ho silver. It's
It can be replicated.
But you got to have another big boson generator or something that don't exist or anything.
I don't know if anybody's got a machine that can do it.
Yeah, right.
And it comes to be replicated in the same machine. You don't
Sort of the God machine. It's really the God machine because no one can even come close to what it can do.
Is it funny if I say there's an N in Switzerland that has a sign that says Heisenberg might have slept here? Yes, it is.
No, you're right.
We're not certain. Pins on your frame of
Yeah.
We're gonna fly. I've done this before, Galen and I, so we know what it takes to do it.
This
20
rubric,
seconds, guys. We're starting.
Okay,
Rubric here.
Watch says you still got about 2 more minutes.
Yeah, well, don't touch your watch.
No, it's 10:05.
Actually, the atomic clock in Boulder, Colorado says it's now 10:05.
Yes.
Okay, according to the Bold Atomic Clock, it's time for our meeting. We're starting. Could we hear from our folks that are online? Audio line now, the iLink isn't up yet. When it is, we'll let you know so you can try to sign in. But for right now, we're doing audio. So who's out there in the ether?
Deborah Dupay.
Hi, Deborah.
Hi, Deb.
Steve Peters. Okay, Deborah and Steve. Who else?
Tom McLeod.
Hey, Tom. How you doing?
Hi.
Anybody else?
say again.
Say again, please. Ron Schott. Okay, Ron. Super.
Mike Keeling.
Thank you. That's 5. Anybody else?
And Deb Whitten.
Okay, Deborah. Deb Whitten. Okay. Anybody else? Okay, that's it. We have 3 tasks at this meeting. First, we're going to go through a rapid scoring of what we...
Hey, we didn't introduce ourselves.
Oh, yeah. Well, we can see who's here. Sorry about that. Ted Craver is here because I've been speaking.
Amy Chayefsky.
And from where?
AST and Casa Grande Union High School District.
Brad Zerby, BDG Solutions.
Mike Golden, Arizona Broadband Project, ASTET.
Mike Whipple, ATIC Associates.
Horace Friesen, ATRC and ESOP.
Galen Updike at Asset.
Larry Goldberg, Independent.
Jeff Crane.
Eric Thomas. Okay. And that's it. So we have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. We have about 17 people working this. Great. We're going to get some statistics. What we want to do is capture our first 2 episodes on these pieces of paper you have with you or online, or you print it out, or whatever. The first is the criteria. We have scoring from 1, meaning that's not an important criteria. 3 means that it's pretty important, and 5 is one that we really must use. We're going to go through these criteria so you can sort of get your head in the game of how we might select, how we might score what we've put out as particular objects of our affection, which are the potential towns and little regions that would be the other ones we consider.
That one's got your name on it.
Okay. Kathy Popkin from ADE has just arrived, and we have about 7 folks on the line, and you know a bunch of them. Okay, so let's we'll do with that. Now the first thing is that some of these, I'll read them off. I'll entertain light discussion, which means 1 or 2 people say a few short things about it, but they can't run over in about 40 seconds because we've got a lot of them to do within this next hour. The other thing is there may be 1 or 2 you might want to add or delete or have explained, and so those we'll spend maybe just a little bit more time on. First, we're looking for quick implementation. Now, that's a word that we've selected to highlight several of the comments that you folks said. Any thoughts, questions on that? Okay, check your box.
Let's talk about what that means. Quick implementation meaning
basically, we get these pilot sites up and operating a lot sooner than would be normal.
90 days, a year?
Well, that's something that you have to work out quantitatively.
Okay.
We're just saying, and you can do it shorter, make sure it's short, and well done.
Easier.
Quicker.
Okay.
Yeah, so basically, if you got something that's going to take 3 years to do, you may not want to have it at the site.
Is everybody checking these for themselves?
Everyone will check them for themselves. We will physically collect the papers. You folks will send in or mail in or bring in yours from the virtual part of our meeting.
Okay.
And then we'll sit down and we'll do a data collection on it.
Fine.
Okay.
Ted,
Yes.
this is Deb Whitten. In addition to the quick implementation, I was thinking about successful implementation, and I didn't see that in any of the other items, and so I just added the word successful next to that. So does that make sense?
Yeah, we'll pick that up and make sure that gets in, okay?
Okay.
Okay, because we don't know, we can't specify a successful one. We can sort of want to have that actually we don't do any that isn't.
And Deb, this is Amy. Maybe that's picked up in the next one, sustainability, probable.
Yeah. Okay, probable sustainability, yeah, I had sustainability, probable, et cetera, et cetera.
Maybe it's
You know, if once this happens, well, it doesn't look like it'll be sustained from the folks that you've been talking to, this sort of thing. Any comments on that? Any thoughts? Moving to number 3, position for high impact. In other words, it'll have there's one major definition of this is that have high impact on the rest of the state to follow suit. In other words, it has to have some sort of exposure, some way of making that. The other thing is to have a high impact within the community. So, how important is that criteria for selection?
And Ted, I might even clarify that by saying high visibility. If this is the footprint.
Okay, make a note on your sheet, and we will extend these as we go forward.
Okay.
We'll pick these up. Full system-wide success. In other words, we want to assure that there's full success within the pilot.
What is system-wide?
Well, every pilot is a system in itself. I mean, we got hospitals, schools, economic development. We have the telecommunications system, but basically we want the full system success. We're not just looking for education, we're not just looking for health care, we're just looking for
Okay,
economic
this is
health.
across all.
Education, community.
Yeah, across all.
Across
Okay.
all items
Okay.
for this area.
Okay. Now we also want to have physical presence in this community of K-12, higher education, training, and libraries. And this is everything that's sort of called out for both current education and continuing education. That's our lifelong education. That's what our criteria is.
So higher education could be a community college, not necessarily
Could
university.
be absolutely. Could be extension service of some sort. Could be training program. Because again, yes.
This is Steve. The only thing about the saying that it has to have higher education is that part of the possibility of using broadband is to be able to deliver higher education where it currently doesn't exist. So I'm not sure that we need to say that higher education has to exist at this point.
Okay. All right. We have to keep aware that's possible, though, right? If a microwave from higher education doesn't reach it, then it's an issue. Okay. And moving on, community vision.
But how do we determine community?
Does the community have a vision?
How do we measure it?
Well, they have to provide a vision statement that you think is got some meat to it.
Okay.
Okay, so in other words, the community is involved also. Oh, you got that
This
down
is
below.
part of your community, this is part of checking out with your
That's
community.
down below though.
Well, that's okay, but no. Okay, teacher e-learning workshops, in other words,
Workstations?
Workstations, excuse me. Do the teachers have workstations within their schools? If they don't, it's gonna be much harder, much longer to implement this. We have to go all the way down to ground zero. So if the teachers have e-learning workstations in their schools, access to them, then that's a higher probability of success.
What does an e-learning workstation look like?
What's the components?
Well, it was defined by a gentleman in a conference about 10 years ago. It was run by Motorola, and they were still Motorola. But I'll get that to you. It basically has all the equipment you need for an electronic classroom with a computer and
We're talking
smartboard
about
and that sort of
cameras and everything then.
and software. Essential
Okay.
software skills,
Okay.
and that was defined by the Department of
Something you
Education.
would try to, you necessarily have to have that, or can
Well,
they,
if they have it, it's a better start. If they don't have it, then it has to be considered as part of what they're being, the report's gonna have to put in the bill.
right.
Yeah, so it's a tough, it's a question of decision, okay. We're 10 minutes into this and we are running behind. So, faculty support for facility support for high bandwidth computing.
Meaning the local area network stuff.
The local area network's up and operating, okay. Community leaders, that should be an S there, leaders support. In other words, you got a gaggle of leaders that are gonna come out and pitch this. I mean, basically, do you have all of them there that are important? The community needs are recognized by the leaders. Now, this is a little different take on it. Do the leaders of the community really know the community needs, or are they just pitching their own stuff?
These are non-school.
Well, they're school leaders, they're economic development leaders, they're
Okay.
medical leaders,
All right.
they're governance leaders, you know. Maybe there's a crackpot like me there.
I'm finding these are all motherhood statements, so everything gets surprised.
Well, then
Yeah.
they all go, yeah,
Yeah,
try to be a
that's-
little
be
discriminating
careful
here.
about that, because it's possible to rate everything on a 5, and then you don't have any discrimination at all.
Well, the thing is,
Yeah.
maybe that's basically, these are all good ones then. I don't know, I don't wanna knock anything
Yeah,
out
well,
if
that's
it's not good, okay? Commitment, okay, basically I want you, the community needs to be committed to both lifelong learning and K-12. In other words, if there's evidence that they're not really much concerned about K-12 and they really wanna do all the training stuff, and that's their only focus, for the hospitals and for economic development, then that's something you consider. Okay, ability for rapid application build-out. Application means the educational digital curriculum that goes in the schools and the browsers to the homes, the education, yeah, and we're talking about schools, okay? Yeah. The applications are everything. Willingness to embrace change in pedagogy. In other words, if the schools and applications aren't willing to move away from, seat time recitation and lecture and all of that into an e-learning environment, then that's something that you need to consider. Okay. Leaders have broadband use knowledge.
Knowledgeability there.
Not knowledgeability or knowledge. In other words, do these leaders, what sense of leaders actually understand what broadband is? I mean, in effect, other than the high-level words we use. Find a few gems there, you'll be in better shape than if you didn't. Okay, leadership influence the community. In other words, you got Surprise or someplace, or whatever the couple of towns are where there's a big conflicts within the leadership. I would suggest you judge it based on that. Okay, are they able to extend broadband learning into homes? Or are they aligned to do this? So they're just going to want to limit this to...
If this is, if it's 5 is the top scale and every other thing is equal, this was a 6, by the way.
All right. Well, you can put 6 down, we'll count to one. Everybody gets this 1 6, okay?
We waited for the last one to really have an important.
Okay, all right. These are some of these crossover. What's that?
So that one might get away with 2 or...
Okay. Aren't you your course scoring? Now?
Scoring, But what are we scoring? That's what
These, as
How important.
how important they
We're
are.
going to review
I
these.
thought you were gonna
More important, medium, or high.
don't want me to.
Yes, I do. No, I want you to score them, and you can catch up later, okay? Education leaders committed to assessment, metrics. Some folks don't want to hear the bad news. Or all they want to do is make sure the buses run, because that makes gets money from ADE if they have the kids in the big butts in the seats there. And there's one other thing they want to do. Let's see. Okay. Proximity to broadband access. In other words, they've got to be close enough to broadband. You don't have to spend a huge amount of money running fiber, 100 miles to it or something like that. The potential for student interface devices. In other words, do the schools have more than one outlet in the classroom, or one drop in the classroom?
Technical potential, as
Yeah,
opposed to the
yeah.
ability to buy them or get them on grants or something.
Yeah, okay, well, there's the potential, and all of that. In other words, basically, the infrastructure for the ability to actually have them.
Or support students bringing their own devices. That's the
Okay.
trend and movement with the
And
kids.
that's
They have
really-
right.
that's vital.
Two lines, one is the technical potential to support,
And the cost to buy.
and the other one is.
Tech.
can they-
Okay, we're halfway through this part of it. We're sort of back on schedule again. Okay, do you see evidence, as a strong evidence of parental involvement within the community? So some of these things you're gonna, when you set up your specification for the pilot, you'll just put these questions in there, or not, depending on what you want to do. Okay. Ready to learn. All right, they take the N off there. Ready to learn from exemplars communities. In other words, will these communities go out and look at the few exemplars out there and use that to guide them, or they just sort of want to do their own thing? The schools and learning establishments have available curriculum and technology staff. In other words, they have a curriculum director, they have a technology director. If they don't have that, then there's going to be, anyways, that's I think it's a crucial thing to take a look at. Diverse demographics. This is something, is the population diverse? Is the education of the kids diverse? I don't know. I saw a great play yesterday. I won't mention what it was.
How important is diversity?
Yeah, and diversity is economic status. Economic status. There's all kinds of diversity issues. How important is this? It may be a one to you guys, but it is important to have certain diversity in this, or to a monolithic community. Can that have a strong play here? This is sort of wraps up everything. Is it shovel ready? In other words, can you move very quickly to kick it off and get it rolling? And I don't know.
Seems like a repeat of.
Yeah, it does. But it was so cool. I just had to put it in. Okay.
So then take out one of the other ones.
Well, no,
We do this wirelessly, you don't even need a shovel.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, whatever. Also, do you sense an advocacy level to make this happen within the community? In other words, are there advocates who can go out and actually convince the population and make it punch through?
That seems to be, again, a repeat of.
It is. It's not time to contribute. We'll schmurce these together, and the better minds than ours. Well, no, there's no better minds than ours. Okay. Now this is another one that people hammered on. Can we identified local champion? Was there a local champion there that can really, when the thing gets rough, can get it rolling? Because remember, this is an innovation. And I don't know what the right size pilots is.
I'm not quite sure what that is.
Yeah.
But the question is, that has to be defined. Let's say that has to be defined. I mean, you have Blue with 20 people there and 3 kids, that need learning and maybe a Band-Aid. Or do you have something like the whole Pima County, Central Arizona thing with a very large population with a lot of different schools and things in it.
That's going to have a lot to do in terms of carrier assessment about the economic viability.
Yeah. So that has to be addressed. Some of these things, these are specifications to be addressed. How you apply them will come to the final wisdom of the council. Is there county superintendent support? My guess is, how could they not support this? But is that really important? How important?
I think, let me suggest that this may mean something else too.
Yeah.
It's going to conflict with other plans already in process.
I sense it's going to bundle every single plan they have out there.
Hard to do.
Okay.
Contractual agreements sometimes in other plans that are in process.
Okay.
That's why our little...
Especially if they have contracts with providers that...
That's right.
see this as a conflict.
If this is in conflict with anything else, it's going to be really difficult.
Some of these grants maybe are already written and they can't use them.
Okay.
So I mean, that would help.
Okay.
Support. I mean,
Now, is that bringing broadband into the site, or
no, I'm talking about the application. I'm talking about the whole project.
Okay.
If it conflicts with the plan that's already in existence, that Kenny's already bought into,
Okay.
then it's going to be
You're not just talking about a plan, you're also talking about a contractual obligation.
contractual obligation and plans. I don't know that we have that here, but I think we could find it.
I'm going to make this first white line down here. I've been reserving this for Galen. And we're gonna put that issue down here, and
What are you calling it?
I don't
Galen's
know.
issue?
Galen.
Call it conflict with
With plan, and contracts and...
Conflict with current resources, plans, or contracts.
Okay.
Yes, not in the Pine Top Lakeside area, but if there are grants in place to do other things that are already soaking up,
You're not going to give an example, you're just going to...
I can give an example. In I-19, when we did our little project along I-19, the biggest thing we had that caused that project to go into stretch it out and eventually fail is because
It didn't fail.
the local government down there, our project didn't fail, but the sustainability failed.
Well, let me put it
Okay.
differently. If GovNet already has a contract with a school to deliver these services, we can make that a GovNet pilot separate from one that's using fiber into the community.
Okay. So, but that's to be addressed. We're talking about things that we think they need to address in the specifications. We're not fine-tuning the final specification, okay? Quantification of community resources committed. In other words, we need to know how much bucks they're going to have into it, what they're going to have for all the outside grants. Significance of broadband need. Again, that's does this community really need broadband, or they already have a lot of it? Are they well on their way to moving forward? Or they have so much need, there's no way, hope that we're going to come in and actually do something as a pilot.
It's a recognized digital divide.
It's the right side.
It's back to the right sizing, okay. Okay, broadband aligned to the ADE hybrid e-learning program. I don't know, Kathy doesn't know what it is.
Kathy, you're not supposed to confess that.
Yeah,
Superintendent, blended learning model?
I guess it is.
Yes.
That's what I thought. Hybrid has taken a hike.
But when hybrid went blended, okay. we just call it e-learning, but anyway. But basically line to their program, the broadband panel line.
Any comments from our 7 people on the phone?
And the reason is that, just a second. And the reason is that if you want these pilots to actually be pilots and captured up by the movers and shakers within the overall system of Arizona, that's really important.
Yes, it is.
And any comments from the phone out there? All right.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, this is Steve. I guess looking at this, and it's sort of implied in several other places, but for me, one of the big questions is, are they committed to developing a technology implementation plan?
Well,
They may have a plan right now. They may not have all these pieces in place, but are they committed to developing? Part of this is helping communities to define what the needs might be.
Okay, we've covered all that in our questions so far, I think, Steve. But I'll put a note down here. Anything else? Okay. Become an influence for the next level of adoption. Again, will they play an active role to brag up to the rest of the state how well they did, put themselves on the line for it? Are they able to network into nearby towns? Of course, they didn't have Horace do an edit on this thing for me like you do this.
It's important to aggregate, more use.
Yeah, basically, either use that as an innovation diffusion type of thing, because these pilots are your core innovation sites, and this is our innovation diffusion model. Can they be able to network this into nearby towns?
So is this different than, into the learning, into the home?
No, that's the intra aspects of it. This is the nearby
More
towns.
of a middle mile aspect, so you can reach more.
Okay, all right. In other words, and that's partly due to the towns itself, the location itself, and partly due to the people in the town and where they're fighting with the neighbors or something. The level of current adoption, again, that's is that what kind of specifications? We have some other things that sort of cover that further back. Okay.
Does that mean that little adoption is better because there's more opportunity, or more adoption currently is good?
Well, you're leading the whole thing from the state level. You guys got to figure that one out with your ABDC, with your ABDC with no hyphen after it. Okay.
Less is more points.
Yeah. Okay, we're good. The last two here, then we'll move on, and we're actually, I think, going to be able to pull this off in the time that we have here.
Yes, streaming video.
Live streaming video. So you guys can go to iLink if you want to. Go get a couple of whatever. So we're all set then, right? Right. Okay. The E-rate discount is useful. In other words, this community can that's one of the other outside potential usefulnesses, whether it's GovNet or whatever, and it can just be added to the money that we're using from the state in the broadband aspects.
Well, this is really important with regard to financing. It's part of the community resources, though, that comes up.
Right.
But
and some of these need to consolidate, I think, into that type of
one of the problems that you have with E-rate, by the way, is that it takes so long to implement. It's an 18-month wait.
Okay.
And so that'll be a counter. Yeah.
Part of it, maybe part of it's pipeline then.
If you're looking for students of need, that's a key evaluator of a school for free reduced lunch, showing that you have a population of need.
One of the ways to look at that is it might pay for follow-on stuff as opposed to
Yeah.
initial.
So they may put more into the current thing to get it up and operating, and then this would flesh it out.
Keep it sustained, right.
Okay. The last one here is the ability to fund application from multiple sources.
I would add applications and equipment with technology.
I'm not clear what you mean by application. That is like software?
Yeah, but I'm a software guy, so applications is just a software. And hardware is something else. Okay.
Well, an application is not just a
It's the use of the technology.
How are you applying what you
Yeah.
suddenly got access?
Yeah, if you need extra hardware, you get it, but whatever. But the application is education.
Sort of undergirds some of these other things.
Okay. Okay.
Me, Ted, this is Lillian.
Yes, okay. I'm sorry. On the phone. Go ahead.
I got in a little bit late. I was in another call, so I reviewed all these, and I don't have any questions about them individually, but rather as a whole. And I don't know if you explained this before you all started, but how are we going to check for this information as we're moving forward if you have such a short time frame to make it happen?
We're not. This task force is sort of over with today. What we're doing is we're giving our recommendations in a sort of a straw vote of what the importance is for specifications that will then go in and merge with the other the healthcare and the economic development and the other groups that are subgroups. From that, they will come up with a specific criteria that they're going to judge these with, and it goes on a piece of paper, and they judge them from the proposal sort of thing.
Okay, so they're judging the list that you've put together. That doesn't necessarily mean the schools on that list will be awarded this pilot program.
Well,
There's a whole other phase then.
A region is whatever the region or town will be awarded based on both healthcare, economic development, and education. And we're providing the education input. We're assuming that the other two task groups will come up with a similar list from healthcare and another one similar list from economic development.
Good to know. All right, thank you.
All that'll be smooshed together.
Ted, this is Deborah Dupay. What kind of a time frame are you allocating for this implementation of the pilot?
I am not, and it's not part of this meeting. We're just allocating today and a couple more days to write a report and get this back to everybody so they can get off the dime.
Deborah, that's the thing that the council at large will make a decision. But I think this combined with the similar, inputs from healthcare and economic development will lead to a set of questions that would be in a proposal, request for proposal that, communities, could respond to win the pilot.
Okay.
Anything else online? So we head to the next one. Anything else from the room? Okay.
Yeah, just a quick question.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mike,
A lot of these have implied pointers to the community anchor institutions. Does that need to be a separate line item, or just keep them kind of buried in here? Or is it to be considered at all?
I mean, the anchor institutions that
I don't know how to qualify it, like the number of CAIs or the type of them. Is that even for consideration?
I think that's a function of the size of the community. We'll have a certain number of schools. It's usually a function of population.
Schools, libraries.
Yeah, I sort of let that as sort of a implied sort of thing that we'll roll out. Okay, now we're having two more issues here. One dealing with the provisioning of broadband to the sites. Notice this is from outside of the perimeter of the site on provisioning broadband. And the last one is things we think the state needs to do to make sure these pilots are successful. Okay, now, we need to bring in from the state. Okay, let's look at provisioning. These are the attributes. Rapid permitting.
So we're just talking about for the pilot.
For the pilot itself, that's non-site specific. Okay.
Okay.
I guess there's certain people have had a little experience in this.
Oh, we've had lots of experience with this.
This might be, rephrased as, the willingness of these communities, to adopt a draft framework for permitting.
Yeah. Okay, that's
or exception.
Yeah. But that's a very important. That's a very important thing. If you can get rapid permits, then you might check a 5 or a 3 on that. That's what I'm looking for here. As an example, you can check one if you want to. Available middle mile infrastructure.
That should be lack of middle mile infrastructure.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, wait a minute.
Because if it's already got middle mile infrastructure, it's not a candidate for the pilot.
Okay. Okay, so it basically needs middle mile infrastructure. Okay, I'll put that in there. Okay, needs middle mile infrastructure. Yeah, we can adjust these on the fly. Okay. Multiple last mile providers. Some wanted just 2, some wanted a lot more than 2. So I just put multiple last mile providers. Is that a important criteria?
That's more to the homes than it would be to the CAI, to the American institution.
So if we think anchors are more important for the pilots than the homes, then we probably group that list. Okay. Providers to develop last mile access.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, I don't know. Is this a question? I mean,
no. These are attributes. These are attributes of provisioning of broadband
Do there
sites.
exist providers that will develop the last mile access?
Okay, that's a different. Okay. Yeah. Do they exist? Is how we should interpret that.
Yeah, there's no one's going to.
No
one's going to come to this party. I mean, you're not going to have a baseball game.
Depending on how this is structured, you could in fact have the community develop an RFP or RFQ or something to make a choice, and then that would help it work.
Okay, I'm sure you'll deal with it in a month or 2 as it comes up, right, Galen? Okay, and then proximity to broadband off-ramps.
Does that mean the equivalent of Tier 1 capacity?
No, that's the middle mile system.
So basically, it needs that proximity or not, or do.
Well, if it's 100 miles away, then it isn't a viable pilot. If it's 5 miles,
is not the right phrase there.
Well, what's the right phrase?
I would say to broadband capacity.
Okay. All right. I'm going to the next page on ours here because that's the way our pages are set up. Provider industry must support programs. In other words, the provider industry in that particular, in general, in the state level, they, what's their name, runs the association. The other ones really must support the
Arizona, New Mexico.
Yeah, Arizona, New Mexico folks, yeah.
Cable Association.
Yeah, and others.
Susan Litterson.
Yeah, there you go. She's a good guy, no.
She's great.
20 years, yeah.
Yeah,
okay, so that, how important is that, 3 to 5 or 1? That adequate broadband capacity, I guess, can be delivered.
That's kind of the statement with,
yeah, it is about
the last line.
Well, adequate, capacity, you know, that you put capacity
I think
in.
that's kind of a given, that's the whole purpose of this, I don't even know if that's,
Well, it's important, size of the pipe.
Size of the pipe, you know, and the size of the pilot. The pipe's too small for the pilot, that's, you know. Okay, other provider systems like GovNet, grant recipients, the other things out there that that can be applied, can be molded into this, or there'll be a positive aspect to this.
okay.
It's kind of vague.
And in fact,
We're talking about some people that got the grants, like the Navajo Nation, GovNet,
Okay.
Tohono O'odham.
So I guess it's, can other provider systems be incorporated, right?
yeah.
Okay,
we
that's
fa-
almost a conflict sometimes.
No, it's not that we can be incorporated, it's that we factor it in. In other words,
Yeah.
if they've already got it done, then we're not, why go there?
Okay. Okay.
That's right.
Okay. But I think we have to deal with it, is it can be incorporated in, or is it a conflict? And I think that's something that somehow needs to have some sort of
Well,
specification.
in this sense, we've talked about possibly having more than one pilot. So for instance, we could coordinate with GovNet or the Navajo
Okay.
Authority to do a second pilot that is doing all of the e-learning stuff that's described here, in parallel to a pilot to
Okay.
to highway construction.
Okay, we need to sort of get going on this now. In fact, this is part of an education process for us when we get into the next one, okay? Factoring grant recipients, that's, are you gonna really, and that's really was covered above, so maybe
Right.
what we do is just take grant recipients and use that and give it the same mark, just below. Ease of right-of-way permitting.
We just said that.
Right-of-way permitting. There's other permitting within buildings and entries and things like this. This is right-of-way specific. Or should that be part of the general one? What do you think?
Most permitting is to do with right-of-way, either in or out.
Okay, let's scratch off that one. Galen says it's covered in rapid permitting.
That's part of the whole reason we're doing this pilot, is to demonstrate that permitting can be done quickly. I think it's really, really important. I see.
All right, we'll leave it in there, and we'll decide, let someone else finish it together if they want to. Okay, is there backhaul in the system?
Galen?
Backhaul is typically, what middle mile is all about.
All right, well, if it's captured middle mile,
Yeah, I
you've
think
got middle
that's a
mile.
redundant,
Yeah.
Okay, that's redundant, okay. Cost close to rates in developed areas. In other words, you don't have this 10 times price bump just because this is a pilot sort of thing.
Well, that's the beauty of this is it's going to provide a costed or a reduction in cost.
Well, that has to happen or it's not going to work. So that's the criteria.
So
This
the final
site
result
uniqueness.
is competitive, I guess.
Okay. Remember, this is about attributes of provisioning. And highway affords access. If someone says we want highways to afford access, and that's to get your beanpole with the magic thing on the top, okay.
That's what we're trying to prove.
That's what you're trying to prove. You guys give it a 6 then, okay?
All right, I'll give it.
Okay, moving right on. We've got 5 more to go, and we're supposed to do the whole thing in 40 minutes, so we're almost right on track. State support of pilot site. Now, these are things that need to happen at the state level to make education work within the site, assuming the site is fine and all the highways provisions are correct. And okay, so there's access to the state's student. What's that? Accountability. Okay, instruction.
So this becomes the model to prove the state's plan for education.
Well, this, we have access to this, which we're assuming the state's going to have up and running within a time period that we have for it.
The new state?
The new stage, yes. That's supposed to be online by next March or something like that.
So you just need that data to support?
Connectivity to it.
Well, yeah. Okay.
What is this accountability system? Is this metrics for educational performance? Is that what you're talking
How
about?
do they report financial, ADM?
Well, there's 2 systems.
There's some accountability.
But the new one's going a lot deeper. It's going into
SACE
class.
is student attendance also.
Student attendance. But this
Close to the ADM.
the new one, AELAS, is the new one that
As long as student
achievement thing. Well, basically, it goes into the classroom with the students and teachers and gets a lot of granularity we don't have yet. And this will tell you a lot about whether broadband's really increasing education or not, whether it's just being plugged into the school and they're just cranking like they normally do. If this happens sort of the tail end of the project, that's fine. You know, the current situation is to get it up and rolling first. A decision support system for digital curriculum. That is a support system that will allow the educators to select the right applications within the schools and to have them the best and the most effective applications.
Is that available stuff?
It's all available out there in 1,000 different places, Curricky and whoever else you want to talk to, and the vendors. There's no...
Well, the state does not set curriculum. They set the standards and the district select their curriculum.
That's why it's a decision support system. It allows the districts to set it. We're not a text-budget adoption state, guys. Right. Never will be. Well, who knows what we this state will be. Don't say never in this state.
So would it be correct to say that decision support system for digital at district level?
That's what it would be.
I just added the district
because level. It would come down to the decision of the district.
Okay.
And what almost seems more important to clarify there is digital citizenship and that students are using these tools in the right way, that they're being, not so much what's being generated out of the classroom, but really from the student safety application purpose side.
There's a lot of rules in place for that, and digital curriculum is inclusive of everything, whether it's English or
Are we
whatever.
suggesting that these items have a, shall we say, an approval, available approval from the state as we get
No,
this pilot?
this adds a context that needs to be in place at the state level to assure our pilots get successful. That's why it's not directly applied to the criteria for pilots.
Okay, so this is outside the pilot selection.
Yeah, basically,
Okay.
basically we're going to, but you're allowed to select these pilots, these sites, based on the fact that this stuff is coming down the pipeline is already here. That's the idea.
Okay.
Again,
So if one of
it gives
these
a
is
context
missing
for the
a particular
ADC.
pilot area,
Okay.
then we probably aren't going to see it. And that might, for example, for an example, might preclude an education system that's on a reservation, for example, because they might not buy into this at the level that's needed.
Well, we're not saying they're going to have to buy in for anything. They're saying they can make that decision, but the state has it to offer to them if they want it.
Okay.
That's how the state operates.
And how does that affect pilot site selection?
As a pilot site,
If they buy in or they don't buy in, is that a criteria for selection?
right now, if people knew what the state was delivering, and some of these things aren't in place yet, then I had really questioned you doing the pilot sites for education.
Okay.
But I didn't say that. That's off the record, right? Camera, you didn't hear
Yeah, I was
that.
gonna
You're not
say,
recording.
this is being recorded.
Could this all be summarized by the last one?
Well, hang on a second. Let's quick get through it and then move on to the next one, because this is not all that important to this group, but I think we need to get on to this, start moving on to the next one. Pre-service e-learning education at the universities and colleges, in-service education training and development, which is delivered through IDEAL and a bunch of other entities from the state level. Research on the effectiveness of the pilots, that's going to be outside the pilot selection, but
Does that mean that these things are already in place in these communities or not, or could be?
well, you check them out and find out whether they're or not. And I say ABDC should poke around and find out whether they can get these people moving forward. If they're not, to make this happen. Multiple other applications. I don't know what the hell that is. Anyways, I don't know what that is.
That probably means that there's health and economic development applications also.
Right.
Could be. It could be. Let's just call it that, okay?
That's what it is.
Health and, I know the three of us went through these before.
Health and economic development.
Okay, and identified strong state level sponsor. Now that's something that.
That's asset. That's the broadband committee.
It has to be, but there has to be, even within that committee, a really strong sponsor for that site. Or for other sites.
It could be
From the Department of Education.
What's that?
Strong sponsor?
Well, maybe they need strong sponsors from the economic development folks at ACA, and also the whatever we have in the health area and ADE.
There are multiple agencies strong.
Yes, Steve. Go ahead, Steve. We just wrapped. Go for it.
This is implied in what you're talking about now, but the technical support that's available for implementation. So we talked about in-service educator training, development and education, but there's the whole technical assistance piece, developing all of these systems.
Can you get closer to your phone, Steve?
I'm sorry about that. So what I was saying is that in addition to talking about in-service education training, and maybe this is implied under the strong state-level sponsor, but there has to be the technical assistance available for the implementation of these systems, for the development and implementation of these systems.
Yeah, that goes back to a capable curriculum and technology staff. In other words, there's curriculum directors or technology directors that within the pilot effectively to make this happen.
But Ted, that may be local support, but I'm talking about at the state level, which is what you're referring to right now. Is there support from the state level somewhere to provide that support in implementation?
Well, we certainly will consider the types of things that we have in the grant to help support these too, by the way. I think that's what you're referring to, Steve.
Well, Kathy by herself can support the education part of it, but technical side of it, I don't know. Steve, I've captured that, and that's a good one. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's a good one.
Well, that might be part of the state support that he's talking about.
Yeah, we'll gin up something within our team to cover that.
That is what I'm talking about, state support.
Yeah, we got it, Steve.
So is there going to be a research study done on these pilots? And is there willingness to participate in the research?
No.
Or do they have their own research going? I don't know what that means.
No, basically we're saying as the pilots evolve, Asset needs to somehow have a research part of what they're doing to learn from them, so that when you go statewide, which is your ultimate goal on this thing, not just do pilots and fade away, that you've got some really good knowledge, data, stories.
So we'd have to do some ongoing data collection and research on our own, and I think we need to enlist third parties who are doing that.
Yeah.
Some of the universities.
The university folks and other folks.
Okay.
All right. Yes. Okay, we're going to move on to item number 2, which is going through the set of recommendations. Now we had this one doesn't have it split out. I had it. I brought some with me that actually Sierra Vista and Fort Huachuca are 2 different schools and districts. One's I guess a military district, and the other is a civilian district. But other than that, this is sort of what we have here. We have what, 40, 50 of them, 60 of them.
2 sides to pages.
Now, it's 2 sides on the pages we have here. You folks have the E version of it, and it's all in sort of one.
So everything that's a single color, though, says that these communities are geographically adjacent to one another. Is that a fair statement?
That's a fair statement.
That's a fair statement.
So how do you like my color selections here, guys?
They're very tasteful.
Being very, yeah.
In fact, I'm ready to paint some rooms.
There you go. Yeah, these are good room colors. Like I keep telling people, I wanted to go to art school. Mom wanted to go to engineering school. So I just filled out every once in a while. Okay, let's go through these. And now you have some criteria in mind. You have a very weak or non-understanding of most of these areas. You have maybe a strong understanding somewhere. I don't know if you can score them or not, or whether that's even a valid process right now. But why don't you give it a go? What the heck?
We kind of need the other criteria with more data behind
well,
the criteria, don't we?
We need more data, but you've gone through it, and now you're all experts on our current education criteria. So you can do a preliminary straw vote, or whatever you want to call it, to go down through here. And we'll just go through them. Horace, would you read these? Because you know a little bit, you know more geography better than I do in the state, and Brad also. And you two guys go ahead.
Sure.
Horace is going to cover it, and Brad will help out if there's any questions.
Can you tell us which general area of Arizona these groups are in?
Okay.
Sure. Okay, so I still don't know exactly how we're scoring, what we're using as a basis
basically,
scoring.
I was tasked 2 weeks ago by the ABDC Ed honcho, 3 of them sitting in this room, that they wanted to get a collapsed list from us of 4 to 10 items. Communities.
Right.
And I'm refusing to do that. I think we're premature for that. Absolutely refusing. Anyways, but I will give them a straw vote. Okay.
Okay, but these, I'm not clear about what the scoring points mean.
Well, 5 means that, that's one that you'd really get behind strongly. 3,
based on what?
need.
They based on all the stuff we've been talking about for the last 45 minutes.
Okay.
Galen can speak to all of these.
So we don't want Galen to speak on it, it'll take forever.
Okay, okay.
Captain
Okay.
Poplin has some, some
So
understanding.
was the data I sent over
Yes, it
used to
was,
determine some of this?
well, everybody that sent anybody was put in, so basically we had it in here. Why don't we do this then? Why don't we go around the table and if each one, let's do a totally different thing. We've got, we got a good 40 minutes, to do this, so, let's go around the table and if you've got 4 or 5 that you really know something about, shovel ready or something like this, you just pitch it for a little bit.
Yeah.
And then basically I'll pitch it, no, you pitch.
And you're pitching these clusters of communities.
One of the problems.
Well, the clusters or individual? Let me ask you that then. Are you basically going to have a pilot that's cluster or a pilot that's individual town?
The intention is, I think, to wind up with a cluster, because I think that as long as they're within geographic.
So we actually have 8 areas here, there are 9 areas.
There's Route 666, which is now for some reason 191, is about, 300 miles long or something like that.
Well, mainly because we'll be
And then-
able to aggregate more schools if we can find a reasonable cluster.
And there's a river country, and then there's whatever. Okay.
Excuse me, this is Lillian Ritz on the phone.
Yes, Lillian, how you doing?
You just went through that list on the other page where you were explaining them, but did we actually set the score? So, for example, if I look at the other list for Toltec and I say, as I'm going around and we're saying let's defend it, I could say, well, for Toltec, we said, let's just say, for example, maybe it should be positioned in a high impact area is a number 5. So therefore I could say Toltec fits that criterion, and maybe 3 others that we've selected in that green area under site-specific specifications. That way. I guess that's what I was thinking. Once we determined what from the first page were our high priorities for those areas, then we would see which schools fit those high priorities.
And here's the issue that I see. Until we actually apply this list of criteria to specific communities and get back the answers of how many of these criteria do a cluster of communities actually satisfy, and what do they not satisfy, we don't really have any kind of a measure to then make a decision about how to score.
I agree with you. That's exactly what I was thinking.
These last 20 minutes, we're going to focus on the criteria they should be using. That's really quantitative and logical and all that. I want a gut level whatever.
Yeah,
I think there are a number of people around the table here, maybe 4 or 5 of us, and maybe 3 or 4 on the phone in their respective areas, who know the geography of the particular area.
Okay. But it's really more about, they're already clustered by geography, so this is really more about, in your gut, you believe that they're going to satisfy 50% or 70%.
Yeah,
And I want to go school by school. You guys can figure out the area issues.
How many are going to be selected for the pilot?
We don't know.
Okay,
We have a
thank you, that's what okay.
maybe one or two,
Whatever. We were talking up no more than 4.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
No more than
So
4.
I want to start with Kathy, and she's going to talk. She's going to take a quick comment about what 4, 5, 6 you have there. Right.
Okay.
Why don't you pitch those?
Well, several of these on the list have had grants through us for technology, a variety of technology projects. And one that stands out to me is the Holbrook Group. They have an incredible community, a strong leader in their schools, and what they say is the missing link for them is broadband. And they have said to me, you give me broadband, we'll blow things off out of the water. So Holbrook, they've got equipment, they've got strong leaders, they have a strong community.
That includes Joseph City also.
Okay.
I agree.
It's near. It's near. Another one that I think has a lot of potential, Sierra Vista, Fort Huachuca. They have a lot of capacity. There's some strong leadership there. They have a lot of stuff. So that's one that I would consider.
Which one, though, Sierra Vista or Fort Huachuca?
We just had a side discussion.
Let's just have Kathy give hers, and then we'll go around, and you wanna pick it up and give it another bump, then do that when it comes back to you.
No, the question is which one, that Sierra Vista and Fort Huachuca were listed together.
Well, Fort Huachuca is the one I'm.
Right, yeah, okay.
Okay.
With regard to the Holbrook one, GovNet is already, I think, scheduled to put a tower in there, and so they're gonna get broadband through GovNet.
Okay.
So, that can still be classed as a pilot for the purposes of what we're doing, but it's not a two-highway pilot. And I think we're gonna start making a discrimination between.
Okay, so we're gonna stop all of that discussion now, and just get our gut level feel of what we want in there, okay? Because that criteria comes later on in the process.
So you're talking about strong leadership and previous experience.
Well, existing equipment and.
Look,
Yeah, and they have.
I wanna hear from Kathy, then you guys can go.
That was the question.
Let's clarify.
Oh.
So, the other one is Wickenburg. They have been kind of a sleeper. I think they have, especially in their high school,
In the back.
they have a strong leader, Howard, who is on our e-learning task force. He's really gotten involved with digital curriculum. I think he would be a rapid deployer. And they have one of our online schools. So
Do you have any more?
Okay, we did a project in Eloy, Florence, Central Arizona College. They had a video conferencing grant, and it made quite an impact in their area. Florence has now gone completely high-tech, and they have strong leadership and great influence in their community, so they could maybe be a flagship for some of these groups.
Do they have broadband now?
Excuse me?
Do they have any broadband now?
I believe they do. I don't know the details about it, but they have a track record of strong leadership. Casa Grande, I can't speak to it per se because we've not had a grant with them, but Amy's in the room, and she might want to pitch.
Oh, well, the thing is, okay.
I'm done.
You're done,
What's
okay.
the key one for me?
Okay. I like the Show Low area because I go up there for vacations. Gila Bend, everyone does. Gila Bend is another town that had a lot of people talked about, and I've had some.
Gila Bend is what, 1,500 people?
Something like, well,
Yeah,
wait a minute, and a bunch of shrimp. No, I guess that's out of business.
About 400 students.
Hey, wait a minute, no side discussion. I'm trying to get my brain together here. And let's see, is there any other one in here? I'm sorry, Time Pass Lakeside. I'll go for that one also. Okay.
So that's the show.
And I will go for Prescott for political reasons. Okay, what would you like to say? Okay, what do you got?
Casa Grande, Union High School District.
Casa Grande, okay, we got.
Casa Grande, we've got several things going on there, and I shared that in the last meeting. We've got the Phoenix Mart coming in, which is a huge development project. I just brought some literature if anybody wants to see. So this would become now, through the Sun Corridor, a very public venue. We have several feeder schools, support Tohono O'odham, Gila River Community, Sandfield, Sackatone, Toltec. So we've got a lot of outliers. We're along the freeway. We would support a lot of that.
We love it. Okay, remember, we're only going to get a little tick mark out of that. So do you have other ones
In
also?
the district, I think we have 10 meg, if I'm using the right language. Okay. But some of our schools, like Sandfield, very limited connection.
Okay. Let's limit about 2 sentences for each one of the high points and move on. You already got a tick mark down for it. Okay. Anything else? Any other ones? Stanfield, okay. Okay. So you want to do Stanfield and Sackatone in there also? Okay.
Well, when you said
Yeah.
Casa Grande area,
The whole thing.
you're talking about basically this whole gray area.
Okay.
I already pitched.
Fairly much. Some of them are separate school districts, but yeah, and we partner with
Yeah.
CAC, and
Okay.
so
All right.
Okay.
we're sort of the center of the county.
Brad Zerbe, what you got?
I think it's very important that we select something that I would call rural and then what I would call remote rural.
Okay.
I like Casa Grande, that whole area in there, I think we can light it up. It's got tremendous economic potential. There's healthcare facilities there. I think that really stands out to me.
Okay.
I know the leadership down there, and Kathy does too, and she's right. They're just absolute superstars. As far as remote rural, I kind of like the I-191 corridor up there in the north part of it. Springerville, Show Low, that kind of area.
You left off St. John's, by the way.
And St. John's, which I know, by the way, is an area of particular need according to Galen. So that might be a candidate for that. One last thing I want to
county
pitch.
seat.
Oh, okay. Well, that's important.
One last thing I want to pitch is Tonopah. The guy who's Saddle Mountain school superintendent there is very keen on technology. In fact, his wife, Dr. Dina Brule, runs the Talented and Gifted program for Paradise Unified School District, where Jeff has done. That's Jornstan, Dr. Jornstan. And so that's a nice fit, and I know that there's a need there. His school district's 500 square miles.
Okay.
It includes Tonopah. So that's just a thought. Okay?
Okay.
I'm gonna abstain.
You're gonna abstain?
Yeah,
Don't you know anything? Don't you have any gut feel?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm going to mention a region that I think is inappropriate for education, but and it's too widespread, but I want to bring it up anyway just for consideration.
Okay.
Which is the southeastern wine country.
Oh!
Everything from Wilcox to Sonoyta, Elgin, down to Patagonia.
Is that on here?
No, it's not.
Yeah, I know that area.
Southeastern wine.
Behind,
I'll vote for that
behind the
one.
mountains, a high plateau down there.
Okay.
But I
What are
can't,
some of the key cities?
well, Sonoyta, Elgin, Patagonia, and then all the way over
That
to
little
Wilcox.
triangle.
Wow.
Those are
Area I don't get to
Wilcox.
great.
Oh, it's a beautiful area.
But,
Okay.
but I
Oklahoma's
can't see
somewhere.
how to fit that into education, a pilot program.
Oklahoma. What? Okay. Okay, do you have another one?
Sure.
Is that it?
No, that's it.
Okay. Horace?
I don't really have anything in addition to the Casa Grande area. I think that has a good deal of potential and
Yeah, I guess I'll withdraw my, abstain.
Good.
Casa Grande area.
Oh, come on. Now, wait a minute. We don't want to all right, we'll put another couple of votes for Casa Grande down there. Okay, Galen.
The White Mountain area with the center either in Show Low, no, not Show Low, St. John's, Springerville.
Alpine's down the way.
You forgot, Eager's up there, they're together, by the way, but there's a triangle up there that is, St. John's down to Eager, Springerville area,
Total miles between those communities.
29 miles from Eager to St. John's.
Is that the longest stretch?
That would be. Springerville's adjacent. Actually, you have New Trioso up there that's 11 miles, and Alpine is another, like, 16 miles.
What's the total miles, if anyone can guess, in the Casa Grande area, all those communities there, what's the total miles?
You have about 14 miles between Casa Grande and Eloy.
Yeah, Eloy, and then out to Stanfield is maybe 10 to 15.
6 miles the other direction,
Okay.
8 miles.
All right.
And then we come almost to Maricopa up the
Yeah.
Casa Highway,
A little less,
maybe another 10,
10
15.
miles, yeah.
And then up to Saccatone is maybe a long stretch.
Well, Saccatone is
That's same as
right in
Eloy?
the middle of the reservation.
Okay.
We're about
No
40
more
miles.
side conversations. Galen, what else do you have?
The other area that has the greatest need is Parker and the Critz.
Parker and what?
And the Critz, and the western,
the Colorado River.
Oh, Colorado
actually
River.
eastern, La Paz County, and with Parker, and you move east from there, and there is a huge need in that whole area there.
Okay.
Yeah, Bullhead City is doing better.
Okay. Okay. Henry, what you
Yeah, I
got?
don't have information like on the rural district, like I mentioned last time, but, I still think there needs to be discussion about how you're gonna fit the urban schools into this picture. You know, working with the rural districts is not getting into that issue, so I think that needs to be focused on how do you select which urban districts are gonna work with.
There is a different reason why urban districts don't have broadband as compared to rural districts.
Yeah, let's hear that.
No, I mean, just in terms of whether they have the broadband or not, you're gonna want them to be working with the rural districts, as we talked about last time, to
Yes,
work.
okay.
So there has to be some focus on which urban districts you
Yeah.
pick to work with these rural districts.
Right.
Well,
That's sort of down the way. It also says exemplars. These, like Scottsdale, some of them are Paradise Valley, they're exemplars in certain areas.
Right.
Then that's in this exemplar specification. They're willing to work with exemplars. So I think you've nailed it with this, with one thing we have here on it.
But I'm just saying that's gonna be, they're gonna have to be selected as well, right?
But the thing about
That's gonna be
broadband
part of the
is
pilot.
the partner school doesn't need to be nearby.
Right, with broadband,
Yeah, because
once you get it in.
Yeah.
do them wherever they are in the state.
Yeah,
There's some very likely suspects that stand
That's
out
the reason for broadband.
for that. There's like Paradise Valley Unified School District, that.
And
Yeah,
for
you
example,
mentioned that.
Vail,
Yeah.
anybody also.
Your board just voted this year, who else do you
Creighton
like?
has strong, broadband, and they do a lot with, digital curriculum, Alhambra School District,
Yeah, there's a lot of.
Phoenix Elementary.
Do you think they'd be willing to share
Oh, yeah.
Share what?
their
Knowledge.
technology and teach? That's Paradise Valley.
And
does-
usage.
I think that there was a real benefit to them as well as to the other group. You bet.
Okay, Creighton.
Sister districts,
Sister district, yeah.
and the counties have a lot of crossover between.
Yeah.
Okay, is that it from Henry?
And
Guys, back in the corner, and then we gotta go out on the airways. You'll pass? You're both passing?
Yep.
Oh, my goodness gracious. Okay, let's start out.
Lillian.
Let's see, why don't just by yourselves on virtual there, as you go through as you go by this, give me which groupings of towns and the specific towns within them that you think that should be highlighted from your own experience.
call them out.
Why don't you call out? Let's start with Lillian.
Okay, go ahead.
Lillian, you
Okay.
wanna start?
Yes, I'd like to give second votes to those that Kathy mentioned, because one of the things that I kind of put on that first page list was making sure that they have the support base to move forward. So those would definitely get a vote. I agree with, and I'm sorry I don't know the gentleman in the yellow shirt there in the corner, but being in that wine country, I would have to agree there as well. And I would throw in a personal vote, because if I didn't, I would be remiss from Tombstone sitting on the school board, and as a community leader would definitely push forth whatever needed to make that happen. But from a professional view here, I would also agree with Bullhead and Parker. I think it was Galen who voted for Parker. But both of those communities I've worked closely with, and they have great technical support as well as professional development support folks. And specifically, the whole La Paz area has a person who's working with them from their county school superintendent's office, and is also part of the statewide instructional team and provides professional development in a mentor program. So it does provide a lot of that sustainability. So those would just be the additional votes in addition to what everybody else had.
Thank you. Next.
Okay. Deb Whitten?
I would echo what I have heard others say about the Casa Grande area. As I've heard people talk, it seems to fit with a lot of the criteria we've talked about, so it seems a successful type of an area that would work well. And the Cochise County area also.
Which would be, which part of Cochise, eastern or western?
Bisbee, Sierra Vista, Tombstone, kind of the whole area. And the thing I like about the clusters is that you have a lot of towns and areas to choose from within a cluster. So if we focused on Casa Grande or we focused on the Cochise County area, it's possible to have multiple successes within that one area that I think would give a lot of visibility and marketing and publicity to some type of a project like this.
Okay, Mike Keeling, are you there?
Yes, I am. I'd like to also add some weight to the Casa Grande area, because I think that it's ready to go in several regards, and so that shovel-ready concept, which was mentioned earlier, and which has many definitions and is probably well worn, but it seems like the Casa Grande area makes a lot of sense in that regard. And then it may also be that our Highway 191 area fits into that category. I'm a little concerned that we haven't gone to that far rural connotation that Brad brought up a little earlier, and maybe the River City areas, the Bullhead City, Parker, maybe fits into that, and maybe it kind of starts shining in that regard. And those are my comments.
Okay. Ron Shaw.
He dropped. That's off the call, I believe.
Okay, Tom McLeod.
He also dropped off.
Steve Peters.
Yeah, I have a couple of things. First of all, I noticed that there's a community that's not on this list. I'm not sure what their current status is, but Aho, the superintendent at Aho, has been very interested. What's that?
Right on the top of the list, number 1.
The first.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed it. I apologize. I looked 4 times and missed it, so I apologize about that. But the superintendent down there has been very interested, and I believe that they have been working some with Central Arizona College already for some delivery of services. So I think that's a great opportunity. I have a question about Sierra Vista and Fort Huachuca. What is Fort Huachuca doing now? I mean, they're a central command for our information systems command. They've got to have some kind of services down there. Does anybody know what they're doing at this point for broadband?
Well, I just heard that their military district, and it's under the military, and it's under the, what's the new name for it? Used to be dependency schools. And they can't touch them. We can't use it anyways, according to my official here, my rules guy. Yes, Horace.
Speaking of things we can't use, we were talking about proximity to highways, but I've also heard that we cannot use the interstates.
Only interstate frontage roads. If there's no frontage roads, then we're in trouble.
So we're assuming that around Casa Grande they've all got frontage roads.
We have to find out.
Okay, so that's an important point.
Or Tonopah, yeah, there's several of them. I-40 on Tonopah.
For example, goes to Tonopah.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. Just the point that I wanted to bring up.
Okay, good. Do we have any more? Is that it? Or go ahead.
Well,
no, Steve, are you done?
One last thing is in regard to Casa Grande, if I'm not mistaken, Tim Knabel is the Director of Economic Development in that area, and many of you may know him. He used to be with the Department of Commerce, and I think Tim would be very amenable to getting involved with supporting a project like this.
Okay.
Deborah DePay.
Thank you, Horace. I will advocate for including tribes, one or more, as many of you might also agree that it's critical we include tribes in this pilot as well. I know Tohono O'odham would be willing, as far as I know. Hualapai, Shinle has cooperation from many community anchor institutions there, including Diné College, and they have a health organization there, and we have the Indian Health Service head working with us in the other group, in the health group. So I think any of these tribes that have a health organization, we would have certainly his cooperation. And in general, Yavapai County, the whole of Yavapai County, including Prescott, is shovel-ready. And after working with them for 3 years, if a lot of these site requirements aren't really close to fruition, it does take a long time in many cases to get a lot of these characteristics that we talked about ready to go. So if we can find something that is really something close to shovel-ready, we're much better off time-wise. And the whole of Yavapai County is Tim Carter, the county superintendent, has been extremely diligent for the last 3 years and organized it really spectacularly, including all the teachers, all the students, and certainly the parents and community.
So which cluster of communities in Yavapai County are we looking at?
It would be not only Prescott Valley, but Jerome, Cottonwood, Clarkdale, Sedona, and that is wine country too as well, I understand.
Although Cottonwood is now getting CenturyLink 20 megabit per second DSL. and Sedona, I believe, will.
Well, they're all getting GovNet, and they've all signed up, and they're ready to go with GovNet whenever GovNet can get there.
So that may be in the category of a GovNet pilot as distinguished from a two highways pilot.
Okay. That could be.
Okay, anything else? Any other business?
That's it. Did I miss anyone on the remote line? Okay.
Okay, anybody else want to make any additional comments or additional statements to come up with? Yes.
Real quickie here, Ted, like Globe Miami, I think Clifton is often referred to as Clifton Morenci. Is Morenci a company town? Is anybody know?
Clifton is the county seat. Morenci is a mining town. We don't have them on this list.
Clifton.
Yes, we do.
Where it should be Clifton / Morenci.
Highway 191.
Okay.
Way down there, yeah.
Yeah. Where are we at?
Clifton and Duncan.
Okay, so they were kind of clumped into the.
The northern part.
Yeah, they're actually in Greenlee County.
They really are.
Okay.
Should have been a different color there.
Yeah.
Even Winkleman are the same, they're near Superior.
Yeah, they're the copper corridor. They actually have some needs down there.
They have had some technology plans with us, and they have.
Right.
Is there any reason that Bowie's not on that list either?
Who?
Bowie. They're further south on the highway.
Wilcox. Towards
Yes.
the New Mexico line.
When you're talking about need, they are in desperate need.
The name of the town again?
Bowie. B-O-W-I-E.
Bowie.
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 Excuse me. Okay, let's put a wrap on this. Your stunning trio of Oris and myself and Brad Zerbe will somehow, from all these hash marks and all your inputs, try to sort of bunch these various groupings into, some sort of something or other to hand off to our friends over there for further work. But I think we have good input on that.
Okay, email your sheets to where?
Okay, we got Pine Top Lakeside in the wrong area, by the way.
Okay, well, make any corrections you want to make, mark them on your
Star
sheet,
Valley Pacing
and then hand both sheets off to myself and Brad Zerbe, okay?
We have some other issues.
Now we've got about, half hour left. We want to let, of course, end early if we can. And the issue now is to make some recommendations for this whole process. In other words, we've had sort of pioneered going through this, sort of getting some of the data out, some putting some prototype stuff together about where these places might be, what specifications you might want to use for the FAS. Now I think we need to speak directly to the ABDC itself. Really talk about recommendation of what you bring to this from your staff and maybe the other groups, but mostly staff and other outside entities we've been talking about. Now, at our last meeting, let's see, hope the camera can follow me here. I don't know if you can read it from that distance or not.
Oh, it's going to be fine.
Okay, we had used the Speak Up survey that Department of Education has, and it's a national survey, but it's got a lot of data from parents and administrators and community folks centered around various schools, and you get some sort of sense for what they would like to see on technology adoption and other stuff from the survey. So it gives you another feeling of what, other than just what they tell you, of what actually is existing in their school. And that's just K-12.
We have Arizona-specific Speak Up survey data, and it's on our website.
That's what I mean. In other words, it's Arizona-specific.
And the survey's open now for people to take it.
For the following year, we have to use last year.
No, for February. We'll get it in February.
Can you email the group the link to that specific Arizona breakout stuff?
You may have, but you won't want to do it again.
Okay, that would be great.
Okay. We would ask them to take what we've got and integrate it with the other task groups. And frankly, I don't know how you're going to pull all this off, but basically you need to get the other task groups to get specifications in, cross specifications across each other, find out the ones that seem to pop up as the top 10 or 20 or whatever you want to put into actually.
They're working on that. They're a little behind this.
Yeah. Okay. So.
Oh, wow.
So anyways, we want you to.
So just to understand this, you're asking these task groups to go through and develop criteria like this
No, they're gonna do it their own way. But the thing is, how do they do it? We wanna make sure ours is integrated with them, and theirs is integrated with ours, and.
But what they're doing is still funneling down to a set of, possible recommendations for geographies to do this in, based on their healthcare criteria or their economic development criteria. So they're doing it in a slightly different way, but they get to the same place.
Okay, and your goal though is to do what by
Well, then
the end of this month?
to overlay all of that, such that, such that hopefully it pops out that a particular geography and a cluster of communities are absolutely the best from a standpoint of healthcare application, demonstrations and pilots, for economic development demonstration and pilot, and for e-learning, demonstration and pilot.
So you expect to select those communities just based on these criteria without going into these communities and trying to find out more information?
There's another level that we can get to, and that's one of the things that the council is going to have to decide is, do we want to go through the time cycle of actually doing an RFP with all the communities and getting back their feedback, or do we want to simply, estimate what we believe, how many of the education criteria a cluster of communities satisfies, how many.
Some of these communities are already in the process of doing these. For example, the Sholo area is doing something, and also the Pinal County has done some pretty interesting things, and we're tied into that. I've been tied into that for 5 years. So I know who the leaders are, and we've been talking all along.
So the council is going to have to decide how deep to dive before making the selection, basically.
So the RFP is either formal or informal.
Right.
If it's informal, the council gets together and says, okay, these are popping out, top three of them, let's look at these and make some decisions. I would like to emphasize what Brad said about the fact that it's great to go with a big kahuna between Phoenix and Tucson, with a lot of show and a lot of moving forward, and we're all ready to do it. But this also makes a secondary, isolated city someplace that's got some unique rural challenges versus a combination of rural. Right. And actually put some of your bucks in there too.
Could I add one community, Tusayan? Your thought about one other, remote rural community, Tusayan, up by the Grand Canyon.
Now that we've learned to say it, it'd be nice to put.
Yeah, we worked on that one or something.
Is that the correct pronunciation?
Tusayan.
Yeah, there are two acceptable pronunciations. One is Tusayan and one is Tusayan, but I prefer Tusayan, so take your pick.
Yeah, now if you're Chinese, you got that different. He did. That's like a big red light shining on one or the other, but he got it because he speaks Chinese.
Now, the third thing is, ADA has a broadband chart.
I know that, but nobody called them out.
And this ADE data study that Kathy has, and keeps getting more all the time, of how much broadband is actually a school is currently using, and what the ratio of that per student is, and you get sort of an idea of the broadband at school. If a community says, I want to put 100 meg into every school, and we've got it solved, you'll say, well, that was fine 5 years ago, but we're looking 10 years from now to see what you actually need. So that data on the chart needs to be in part of your decision making.
Right.
Okay, the asset broadband map that Galen,
Galen and
we still got both arms and legs. I'm not sure how that worked out.
Let's analyze it. Let's analyze the data. Can we do that?
We're starting to get the CIA data pretty well lined out now.
And that's the most critical data.
That's the most critical.
Yeah, it is.
Then again, use that data of where the broadband is and how close it is, and we give it that map a really robust workout, because we think that needs to become more and more operational in general if we're going to roll out the rest of the state. We need to look at multiple synergies. That is, and we got into that with the added. They are multiple synergies. The thing is, we're asking you not to just all of a sudden go narrow down into one or two or three criteria and just go for it, sort of thing. Like because the governor wants it or whatever, or because I want it. It's influence. Legitimate power. Okay, that'd be fine. Okay, or to keep your jobs or something like that. Then basically, I really like to see, once you start selecting, getting forward, I'd like to see you guys develop a best case scenario for that light. In other words, get with the strategic planners in the state, or get with some creative idiots, and come up with some scenario that says, this is, let's say it's Casa Grande. Casa Grande over this year is going to do this, next year they'll do that, the score is going to go up, there, this and that, and the healthcare will be better, and there'll be more access, and economic development is going to boom, and infill these areas, and all these old houses we see that are empty are going to be filled. Whatever it takes, so that we could have an image, a picture out there to sell. This is sort of a marketing piece. Best case scenario would be the future outcomes would be that's still supported by all of this. Because each one of these goes all the way back into something that's happened somewhere, for example, our school, like you were talking about, or someplace else, and seeing what that can bring forward. And then we just talked about the formal, informal, RFP, and this sort of thing. Now, is there anything else in this group, and I'm going to throw it open to anybody, that you think we ought to have the ABDC itself and an asset take a message from us on how we want to see this thing finish up. Yeah.
Based on what I heard from ABC the last meeting we had, they're expecting this group to come back and give them somewhat of a definitive answer where to go, and then they're going to approve it at the next meeting and move ahead. Let me just and I'll qualify it. What I'm saying is there was an expectation built into as we saw this energy and we saw this, let's do it now, what do we need to do next? And it was tied in, some of it was tied into the legislative process even, and what can we do this year in the legislature even. So some of that has been taken off the table with regard to perhaps some legislative action with the substitution of the pilot program, but I think our vision needs to be, what can we do by April, by the end of this school year, as far as we move ahead? I think that's the time.
Let me just add one thing, though. The expectation of the ABDC Council is not for this group to come in with that recommendation, but for a composite of this group.
And the other, okay. So they're looking to these task groups to come up with a decision to come together, and I think the time frame we're talking about, which is I get to again, is in the April to May end of school time frame, and get things working through the summer and et cetera.
Yeah, I think the notion is to have a concrete plan in place with lots of details specified.
And even maybe perhaps pilots chosen.
In that time frame, including possibly having the actual pilot locations chosen.
Right.
Okay, so you're saying a time frame, we shouldn't be, they and us are not unhappy if we don't just select it today, select the 4 or 5 pilots today. Okay, that's cool. So what you're saying then is that the time frame is basically you're going to work this through the spring, because actually you have to physically go out and talk to people and dig deep and get interpersonal relationships going and solve.
By the end of fiscal 2012, we are in process and started on the pilots. I think that's,
which is July 1st of next year.
Okay,
June 30th, 2012.
The pilot's been chosen and the shovels are starting to move down the information.
By mid-year, we're beginning to actually implement the pilot.
Okay, all right. So the Jason's going to
well, but guys, you in between the pilot is chosen and shovels are digging, we have a funding phase. We have some other. So if we're going to develop a timeline like that, let's go ahead and be realistic with all the steps.
Yes, I agree, Mike. And by the way, a piece of news. Now, this is definitely not in concrete, so don't take it as such. But it turns out that there may be $1 million available to us from a grant that was received at the governor's office, a BTOP grant, that was to be used for library technology. It was originally $1,600,000, and the governor's office is willing to repurpose the grant to support our pilot if we come up with a concrete plan for the pilot, including its cost, and including the fact that it will also have to serve libraries, because it was intended for libraries. So we'll have to work with NTIA and the governor's office to get that to happen.
There's a lot of things have to happen there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else?
Steve?
Yeah,
my feeling, I'd like to make one further note, Ted, relative to the scope of this subcommittee, and that is this task group, that is that maybe we're not over yet because someone has to do the heavy lifting. The question is how much of it should be done by this task group. But someone has to do the heavy lifting of the overlay of your first group of parameters with this second group of cities. And until that's done, probably from two different vantage points kind of pop out in my mind. One is a self-assessment by the communities. The other is more of a professional assessment, such as Kathy brings from an ADE perspective, and others that might be on a blue ribbon committee that makes those kinds of professional judgments. But that overlay is extremely critical, I think, to a process that we might then take to NTIA for the funding that might be available to us via the governor's office, for an example. So it seems like that's another area that as a task group we should be asking how much of that should we be involved in, where can we be helpful in pushing that ball forward rather than that ball kind of resting now and no one really taking it, smashing it and taking it forward, Ted, as you have done as the leader of this task group. So before you duck out for another San Diego vacation, dare I say, you should consider that, sir.
This is Deborah Dupay. Could I just add to what Mike Keeling just said? Yavapai County has actually constructed a template, more or less, for doing exactly what Mike was talking about. They have not only the technical but also the education issues involved, and they've inspected each school site. So you might want to check with Yavapai County for something that may be already shovel-ready for a template.
But to Mike's point, there is a person power issue, to implement some of this stuff and to actually, come to this next level of resolution.
That's the point. They're coming to that. They've done that already. They have already inspected their sites for both technical, broadband, and education criteria.
Right, but if we want to use their template to apply to other communities, that's going to involve some work.
Well, it involved Jeff Billings from Paradise Valley High School.
Okay, this is Ted responding to that, whatever. Thanks, Mike. Your buddy.
Yeah, really.
The fact that you just did a editing of part of my massive work means you can score one. At least try. Okay.
Yeah, Ted?
I said, hang on, Steve. I'm trying to collect some thoughts. So what we're saying is we need to take what we have on the table here and produce today. We're getting wrapped up today, and make a first general cut on this from the gut level intuition of our people here, based on looking and priming himself the prior hour with the specifications, and provide that as a sort of a final output from the task team. And my suggestion is I'd like to hold to the December 1st deadline to do that, because I want this thing to move forward, period. And I think Horace and myself and Brad might be able to find some time in the next couple of days to, I can take what we've got here, and I can just sit in the office and do a sort of summary on where the lines are, and and what specifications got some knockout marks versus the others. But I think we need to, can we sort of sit together and sort of cogitate as a group of three and come up with that? Does anybody want to knock one of us off that team and replace us? Dave, you were going to speak. Okay. I don't know if that solves your issue, Mike, but my intent on the end of this was to try to do something like that, not just send a bunch of data offhand.
You bet. That's a great next step. Thank you, Ted.
All right, so we'll sift it. We can send it out to everybody for their comments, right? One more look.
Well, what we'll do, we'll produce a report, and we'll send it out first to this team. This team will have, well, I'll send it to everybody.
Do you have the information you need amongst the smaller group to do this?
Well, if you pass along all of your handouts to us.
I want all the stuff we did today with all your notes on them and whatever. And
I think the intention is that report will be, iterated through the whole group.
No report I ever write is ever complete, because it's always or something. or it's just my editor.
Do you want to give them an email address to send the scoring? If you have it, we're going to give you an email address to send your scores to.
So we can go
Yeah,
ahead
you
and...
send it directly to me, okay?
Okay.
Ted@craver.cc. And then I'll physically get them, and I'll physically print them out or do whatever I need to do to get them organized in a working area.
That's Ted@Craver, KRAVER.cc.
For people that don't know, CC is Coco, little island off of Costa Rica.
Is that near
San
Diego?
What?
Is that near San Diego?
Yeah, all right. Close enough.
Why is that your domain?
Because it was the coolest one I could find.
If we were doing this rubric as a real informational piece, we would take every one of these cities and apply every one of these criteria to them.
That's right.
And that's a massive thing. So
that's what I'm saying. If you want speed, then this team doesn't have method. I'm saying we're taking that back. We'll put this on our recommendation number 12. Okay. Rubric. And to by the way, rubric to get specs.
And the trouble is we don't have the data for every one of those cities.
that's right. But we do have data for some of those cities.
Plus data goes out to a decision. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Ted?
that's a lot of staff work. That requires, some hours and hours of people doing some pretty
It really does, but that's a wonderful document for us to go to NTIA with from a funding perspective.
All right, so if you can help pry money out of NTIA to do that, the next final pass on it, which we hope will land right on what we come up with just with our wild ass inputs here. Actually, it's informed.
Ted?
One more question. Where are we going on the legislation?
Yeah, let's talk about that. Because we need to do something for legislation specifically.
The right-of-way legislation?
Those are, the right-of-way legislation is, because there's no money behind it, is still a likelihood. Anything that has to do with money attached to it is not a likelihood unless there is a sponsor that feels strongly like an ATIC or something that will take it separately. A non-government sponsor. This office, ASSET, cannot do anything unless the governor's permission is granted to do it. And we do not have that permission to go forward on this project based on the priorities of this year's, her legislative agenda.
In other words, she will not drive any legislation around this project through the legislature. So any attempt to try to get legislation passed, looked at and passed.
Money legislation.
Has to come from outside parties.
Okay, well, there's three components. One is the universal service fee, I'll call it that, the funding. But there were two other aspects to this that are non-monetary. Are theirs have any life in them at this point?
Yeah, I think that they do. One of the agendas is to see if the Department of Transportation, which is moving the bill through, could incorporate the language and ideas that we need about broadening the definition of transportation to include conduit. And then the other one is the creation of an office to coordinate permitting and simplify permitting.
No, you don't.
No.
You can create the office. It should have a funding. It'll have a funding component, but that funding component doesn't have to be.
The office should have the right to receive funds.
It doesn't have. It can have the authority to receive funds, but you don't have to appropriate anything.
But it doesn't have to actually be funded.
Okay.
So just
Suggestion on those. I think we should explore the two of those with both the ATIC and with the Tech Council, and there may be other groups that we should explore those with to see who might want to lead and who would be supportive, and let's see what kind of how broad that coalition of groupings might be, and if we can develop a leader with one or another of them, such that we might go ahead with a legislative initiative in this cycle.
Yeah. The Universal Service Fund, by the way, has not been out of hand rejected by anybody. in the public yet, including the providers. In fact, they pretty well, by their silence, I think CenturyLink would even probably support it, for example, many of the others. So but it cannot come from within the government. It has to come outside the government, and so ASTIA, for example, could support something. ASTIA, whatever you call it, okay? Or ACHIC could support something, or ATC could support something, AZTC. Or there's a number of coalitions like that. Maybe there's
ABEC for education.
ABEC, yeah.
There's a public policy committee.
Or Gazelle.
For 8 months. What's that?
Or Gazelle.
Or Gazelle.
And I'd like to see an and between all those groups, with one of them stepping up as the leader, and the other ones in a coalition effort supporting one or more of those three bills.
Right.
I think
we would not be able to do it alone.
No.
But they could lend a great support to the other.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay, so those are the types of things that we need to discuss, and need to be discussed externally. And
now the group that's really pursuing this, though, are the two groups: are the policy task force and the strategy task force.
Right.
Now wait a minute. What's the policy and strategy? Oh, out of these groups. Okay.
Out of the ABDC.
Yeah. Right. For example, the policy group is exploring whether what is the definition of unserved, underserved, and served.
And the definition of rural.
What's the definition of rural that we want to apply to this?
We don't want to use the federal definition?
There's 6.
More than one.
No, we want to
the BTOP.
If Arizona's going to lead, they create their own definition.
Say again?
If Arizona's going to lead, they're going to create their own definition.
Right. Well, we
I think we do want to create our own.
Absolutely.
Yeah. The 50-mile definition that's in vogue right now would eliminate most states. And east of the Mississippi.
Okay, now what's the other, one committee was policy, what's the other committee?
Strategy.
Okay.
Oh, that's the state strategy with regard to broadband. That's come out of that committee.
It's also on the agenda.
Does it have any strategic planners on it?
The head of that committee is Michelle Noren, isn't it?
What's that?
Who's it, Michelle Noren?
Michelle Noren. I'm on that committee.
Oh, you are? Well, then we got some strategy guys.
Yeah, that's our strategy.
Okay, guys, let's see. Well, we're getting there.
Ted?
Yes.
Ted, I had a couple of things that I wanted to emphasize. First of all, where does the ATII contract fit into all of this? Secondly is, I think many of you know that ASBA, the Arizona Small Business Association, had been awarded a USDA grant to provide assistance to local communities. I think there's 5 or 6 for economic development purposes. Bill Bolin is scheduled to meet with them to talk about how what we're trying to do interfaces with them. The interesting thing about that is the bill also has good connections with USDA, and I think there's some good possibilities, particularly if we link with ASBA in some way, of looking at additional funding through USDA to support these initiatives. And what we've outlined here, I would think, and Bill would have a better sense, would be a great opportunity for us to approach USDA for some additional funding to support this. So I think we really need to take a look at that relationship. And I know I think Mike Golden, you and Bill were trying to schedule a meeting with ASBA to discuss that relationship.
We are, and kind of at a high level, the synergy that I see there is that there's more than just getting the broadband to these communities, as we talked about with some of the criteria. There's getting the right equipment, getting other capabilities into these communities so that the pilots really deliver.
You want to make the announcement right now with regard to ATII?
I would like to, yes.
Yeah, well, the award has been made. The ATI Institute has received the award that was applied for through SDO, and the catch is it's worth $59,000 for overhead expenses over a period of 3 years. But it also involves the management of consultants that need to be chosen as part of the overall activity of ATI Institute. And we're calling it ATI Institute instead of ATII just to differentiate it from the alphabet soup. So ATI Institute needs to qualify these separate sub-consultants or subcontractors, whatever they're called, and to go forth with grants generally in the order of, 5 to 15K, and then there are some grants that are in the order of 30K and maybe up to 50.
I would say the average, there's two groupings of grant. Put the average grant on the larger size at about 25.
Okay.
And the smaller grant about 4.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And these grants will be granted to communities.
They will be granted to the communities, so ATI Institute will just be the sort of the husbander of the.
Will guide and the consultants will guide the communities in applying for other grants.
That's right.
Possibly for participating in the pilot.
Right. The activities that the consultants will be involved in providing or assisting in are to write other grants or to give technical assistance to the local communities, or there's one other category.
For example, you could take, for example, one of these groupings of these communities, and if there's a community organization in place, or COG, for example, we could go to the COG and say, this looks like a good project. Let's ascertain whether or not one of these is a good pilot.
Yeah.
And that
could be, and would there be a constraint that would allow, let's say there's 6 communities in one of the pilot regions, could each of those communities get a $4,000 grant?
Typical COG, well, depends on it. First of all, you're going to ascertain something about the community itself in relation to this pilot, and then there may be other things beneath that has to be done afterwards. And yes, the answer is yes.
So there's a lot of strings feeding back into this. We really need to coordinate. Fortunately, most of these things are being worked by some of the same people. We have linkage people between all of these, and that's a really healthy way of bringing innovations forward that are so complex with it.
So for me, one question is with ATII or ATI, when in looking at which communities to support, goes feeds right back to the process that we're looking at is what are the priority communities, so that when we're looking at giving grants to a community, that it would be consistent with our priorities. So that goes back to my question about where does ATII then play into helping to pull all this information together?
I think there's a good play that ATII could, in fact, ATI Institute could have. For example, there may be even a possibility of almost an immediately of somebody taking this rubric and applying what we have to these and come up with we have 5 or 6 communities already identified. We got to notify them and then let the consultants work with those communities to identify their strengths and weaknesses. So there's almost an immediate application for ATI.
All right, well, I'd like to see it tied together on that functional basis. I think that's what we're talking to. This has to be integrated together on a functional basis. And not just, in fact, we're all linking back and forth with each other because that goes on forever.
Yeah, and not just to fritter those dollars away with something that doesn't need to.
The COGS have become very important in all of this, by the way.
Well, I want to end up on the political aspects of it and legislation for next year. My organization, the E-Learning System for Arizona Teachers and Students, which is sort of a freewheeling folks that basically is trying to transform K-12 education with e-learning. We will have I think pretty much a legislative group of items together very shortly. We're looking maybe within the end of by the weekend. We'll have something together. We can take a look at and sort of see what we want to do with it. We've got feedback from the business community that they're really interested in it by some very powerful lobbyists and all that sort of thing. And I've been meeting with these folks, chatting with them, and they're just saying, let's get on and get going with it. And so we have to make sure that what we propose is doable next year, and we can find sponsors for these bills, I'm sure, if we decide to get back up. To get our operatives going on it, to get pieces put together. Now, it may not, when you take a bill through, you can't say the governor supports it, ADE supports it, all these other people support it, it's all part of a coalition. You sort of got to just go what's in the bill. And so the bill needs to be defendable on all these areas. But it'll be led by this one nefarious little organization that really has had a history with legislature, and a pretty good one. So as an advocacy group.
So we kind of wind up with all these complementary bills kind of coming together.
Well, they may or may not, because we're focusing on just education, not healthcare, not economic development. So, but the piece we do needs to be complementary to what we're doing. Or telecommunications. Telecommunications is only, we'll just have a little piece of that. But again, that's what we have to do.
Is there an expectation of Department of Education also running a bill or two on this? Do we have any understanding of that?
Pardon?
You don't report to the governor.
Running a bill on broadband?
Yes.
You know, when they came into our e-learning task force, they didn't have anything about that. But that could be something to take up with.
Yeah, we heard a report last week.
Yeah, that was mainly school finance related.
Okay, because the expectation was that there would be some strong support from education for this as a pillar, as one of the application pillars, that we would fulfill that need, and that this would turn the head of the legislature because of its education connectivity.
Well, it's a function of timing. You know, you got your alphabets, AEA, AESBA, and all those sorts. They make their policy decisions in June, and they're usually smooshed down because there's big committees, and so they normally don't come out with much of anything that's an initiative. They're always mostly in the defensive mode. Mm-hmm. So you deal with them in a defensive mode, and you say, okay, this is what you've been talking about. We're going ahead with it. You know, either say you're for it or you're not against it or something like this when you have it in a hearing. So the question is, how do you do this? Well, innovative stuff that goes forward for years never has a constituency in the legislature. The legislature isn't set up for that. Mm-hmm. So there has to be some little group out there that doesn't have a beholden to a massive body of anybody, but we're beholden the whole state of Arizona.
I see this
to run it through.
I see this as having substantial connectivity as next steps to what you've been doing for the last 3 years.
I would involve Stacy Morley.
Okay.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I've forgotten the name of her designee.
Yes.
I know him. This is Steve again. I just want to remind folks that on February 13th, because Al's going to be hosting an education reform forum, and we're going to have the director of the Governor's Office of Education Innovation, Superintendent Huppenthal, and a representative from Science Foundation Arizona talking about the STEM network that they're developing. And one of the reasons we developed this, and to do this in more of a roundtable forum, is to, in particular, to have some discussion with these folks about where technology fits into education reform, because some of the plans that I've seen have not done a good job of addressing that issue. So it's an opportunity for you folks to find out what they're talking about. The Governor's Office of Education Innovation, last I heard, she's planning to develop a plan to submit to the governor in December, which is why we pushed this forum to December rather than waiting until next year. So I'll send out a notice to this group, but I really encourage all of you to try to attend that forum.
Okay, guys, let's wrap. We got 5 minutes on the clock, and I guess we're running on Disney time or something. The atomic clock has just failed.
No, it hasn't.
Here's how we're
Still got 4 minutes.
Still have 4 minutes, okay. For the folks that have not physically handed us your sheets of paper in this room with your markings, whatever markings you have on them, within the next, let's call it 20 hours, if you want to work to 3 in the morning or something, email me, thank you, email me the, whatever you've got, and on what you, on the notes, and as well as the scoring that you think you've applied to these things. And we will, and then the 3 of us, Oris, myself, and and Brad will somehow come up with a time slot over the next couple of days. I'm really busy, you guys are busy, but someone will try to make it happen to flesh out and address Mike's issue of actually once we get this sort of synthesized, come up with some sort of intuitive overlay of what this would be. And for that, we have a promise that we'll get with before our legislation drops. We've got a promise from ASET that they'll give us some sort of smashing scenario that we can go pitch to the legislators if this thing works. What?
The callers are asking for more information on the February 13th education debate.
December 13th. He said February, but it's actually December.
This is Gazelle?
Gazelle, yes.
Okay, that's going to be in Tucson or here? Here?
Here.
So you're Science
At the
Foundation.
Science Center, Arizona Science Center.
It'll be at the Arizona Science Center and statewide audio and web conferencing.
Arizona
I'm going to forward a notice right now.
Oh, the Arizona Science Center. That's different than Science Foundation. December 13th, yeah. We will get that out to you through our listserv.
I'm sending it right now.
All right. Thank you.
Gazelle.org.
And also, as I say, over the next 20 hours, get anything you got to me, and then we'll try to work it up the next couple of days, and get things ready for our full share. It's a tough December to get some things out. Oh, by the way, guys, for you guys in the room, just for you. You know, we sit in these meetings year after year, and no one takes any pictures. So I took some pictures, and I had to do some things on the. I took my grandkids to the Detroit San Diego Aerospace Museum, and so I was making her some copies. So I made you guys some copies, and I will send this out electronically also, so that you can take a look at it. Here you go.
Thank you, Ted.
Amy, we're having a conversation the whole time. Look at
I
it.
look a little bit annoyed, don't I? Galen, what are you thinking? I know more about that bandwidth in that tiny little town than you do.
Yeah, I got to change gears and go strictly ESAP to get the legislation going. We only got a month before we got to get something down there, and we can't spend any more time on this broadband thing.
We need a point person to.
It's still going.
Insurance.
It's still
ATI.
The Office of E-Rate is.
Well, I'm doing that.
Okay, you are?
That's one of my pointy things.
That's, okay, thank you.
I got two phone calls. I got two phone calls out this morning,
Good.
and I got one coming back. And
Thank you. Thank you.
You can bless me too. No, you don't.
I will.
Dad, I can't.
I will. Well, how does that go?
There's a possibility to use it as a springboard.
You're studying Eastern spiritual psychology